Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to put together a little bit different of a video. I wanted to talk about the Artisan mouse pads. Now this is either a video that's going to crash and burn and do horrible on the channel, but I'm really making it because it's a video I searched for quite a bit on YouTube that I didn't really find. And this is comparing the soft, xSOFT, and mid mouse pads. So here I have the FX0, I have an OTSU, which is also a newer mouse pad, and then I have the Artisan HIEN. As you can tell, I definitely have a lot of wear and tear on the HIEN and a few of the others because I really love these mouse pads. I have 3 different mice to compare the Glide on. I have the G305 with core pads. I have the Fino mouse that is using the Hyperglides, and of course I have my infamous G Pro, which is using core pads as well. So the biggest thing is I'm not a science guy, I'm just a gamer. I'm going to talk about my experience after using these pads for several years, and let's kind of go through it. So let's start with comparing the thickness. So I'm probably going to do some cuts here to kind of save you the time. So I'm just going to be pretty much moving pads back and forth. I'll be moving the mouse on there. I'm not going to give you science, friction, or whatever. I'm just going to show you the real world analysis of what these pads really do, and also my hundreds of hours that I've put into these mouse pads. All right, so let's kind of begin with the comparison of soft versus mid. All right, let's see what I can do to even move this around. I got so many pads here. Okay, so let's start with the FX0 mouse pad because I want to show you the difference between the squishiness and also the glide, and we're going to do it between all the different mice. So this here, and this is what I don't see online, so this is why I'm doing this video, and I'm not even sure if this is going to be a great video. Let's just see how it goes. I hope it's really helpful. So the first pad that you see up top is the mid. So the mid has the least squishiness of the mouse pads, and then right here we have a soft. So this is softer than the mid. You can kind of tell from the bend, so I'm going to just bend it. Bring it a little closer there. See, bend. And then I'm going to bring the soft. Notice how there's a lot more, I mean, they stick. They all stick very well, but there's a little bit more flap to it. It's a little squishier. Definitely feels squishy. And then we have, of course, what's become my new favorite is the xSOFT, which is definitely, as you can tell, a lot more malleable. Definitely a lot squishier. As you can see, lot more squish to it. So let's compare the glides of the soft, xSOFT, and of course the mid. So I know I just kind of talked in a different order, so let's begin with, if I can figure out my spacing here, let's begin with the mid first, and then we'll go to the FX, and then we'll talk about the HIEN and the OTSU. Okay, so what we got first here lined up is the mid. This is a mid FX0, so I'm just gonna, as you can tell, moving it left and right. This has core pads using equal force, and of course moving it around. Let me turn off this because I'm moving my scroll here. Now if we look at the G Pro, definitely a lot more slide on this because it's a lighter mouse, just FYI. This is a mid. Okay. And then, of course, this is the final mouse. And, of course, it really has the some of the best glide, to be honest. You can tell it's really light and hyperglide. So if we're kind of moving them all together here. I know this is not the best comparison, but I won't really want to showcase because we're going to do the xSOFT next in comparison to the mid. So let's talk about... So what's great about this is that it adds a bit more grip from what I can feel, especially when I'm using the G305. You can feel, I guess you can call it the graininess. You can feel the texture a bit more. You can feel the texture on the mid, which helps in terms of stopping power. So let me bring back the xSOFT of the same mouse pad and showcase the variance. Now, the interesting part about the soft is that I feel, and also what's interesting is that you spin them upside down. They have a whole different, I don't even call it dexterity. They feel different, right? So what I noticed on the xSOFT, and hopefully you can kind of see this already, is that they feel faster, the xSOFT, which is kind of weird. I was kind of thinking that a harder surface would feel a lot faster because it's a hard surface. You would think that like carpet, it would be much slower. It's not really like carpet. It keeps the sponginess. It still has a texture there. But when I move my mouse around the xSOFT, I don't feel the texture as much. It does have the stopping power, slowing power of, like, I guess you can say a GSR, but it's really, I don't know, it's rather unique. And then when you spit it upside down, the whole mouse pad, it adds a whole different speed as well, which I kind of found. I found that weird. So you see it's kind of floaty on an xSOFT. This is an xSOFT, by the way. So I'm going to flip it. And this is what I found interesting. I started actually aiming like this. Started flipping my Artisan pads. But notice how like there's a whole different speed from, look at that. There's a whole different speed of moving it upside down. It feels so much faster, which I found interesting. So what I started doing with a lot of my Artisan pads is I flip them upside down because I really like the speed that you get from spinning them upside down. Now, I would call the soft kind of like an in-between. Let me grab that 1 second. Okay, so if we have the soft here, this is like, again, it's an in-between the mid and the xSOFT. So if you slide it, has like a, I guess you could say, if you don't want the squishiness, or let's say if you sweat profusely, if you have any issues like that, then of course the best bet that you're going to go with is most likely going to be a mid. And I'm going to show you that on the HIEN here in a moment. And we're going to talk about the OTSU Hayate, and we're going to compare the FX0, the Hayate, and the Artisan HIEN MID. Well, hopefully I said that all in the right order. But nonetheless, the comparison between these, I might have to cut this a bit so it makes a whole lot of sense. If we have all of them here in order together again, and we talk about them. Again, maybe this video will crash and burn, I'm not sure. The mid, as you can tell, is pretty hard, but again, you feel the texture more on a mid as well, from what I noticed. I don't feel it as much. It feels, I guess it's just lighter on the wrist in terms of like, I'm moving here, you can hear the texture and the noise more. I know you can't hear it in the microphone, but I'm just talking out loud what it feels like. And the same thing whenever you go with a soft and xSOFT, you just feel it less. It's really, really nice between them. So in order that I have them currently, it's obviously a mid here, then we have an xSOFT here, and then we have the soft at the bottom here. So that's the FX mousepad series here that I have, all three of them right in front of me. If you have questions in the comment section, let me know what you think about, or any questions, because the biggest thing about as you get softer with each of the mouse pads, also hairs tend to stick out with them. It doesn't impact performance at all, but you can kind of see that the hairs do kind of stick out, and they do get dirty faster. But nonetheless, when we talk about the HIEN and the OTSU, they run into the same issue. This is just a natural occurrence as you utilize more of your mouse pad and, of course, you know, just kind of wear them down. So let's talk about the HIEN next. And again, ask me any questions. I've used these for a really, really long time. I got my original FX Soft about 2-3 years ago. I just bought the xSOFT about a month ago, and I had the mid probably about 7 months ago. And it's very interesting. They all feel drastically different, especially even when you flip them over, the texture, the feel. Sometimes you would think a soft would be slower. That's not always the case. Be mindful that it also depends on your mice feet. Your mice feet are pretty impactful to how the glide is going to feel. I noticed that even comparison to, you know, hyperglides. The interesting part about that I noticed with hyperglides is, especially with like a bigger surface here, is that it was really hard to tell the difference. I'm actually doing it now, maybe not. It's just that you don't feel the texture as much. I would say in the mid you feel the texture, and whether that texture benefits your mice feet really depends on the user. So again, I'm talking just kind of real time. There's no script here. I just kind of want to give my overall thoughts. So let's move away from the FX0 series, but if you have questions, hit me up. More than happy to answer it. You kind of seen them all here, some of the pros and cons of it. The pros and cons I can really think about is really soft, you get a little sweatier. There's an in-between. Hard, you just feel the texture in your hand a lot more. And the speed will vary depending on whatever you get. All right, let's talk about the OTSU, which is apparently between the mid HIEN and also the FX series. Okay, so this mouse pad is pretty interesting because I went with the xSOFT because I decided to just buy xSOFT because I realized that's kind of my own personal preference of what I started liking over the mid, because I used the mid for a really, really long time. I think I used this for about over a year. I talked about it in one of my old mousepad video reviews that it was one of my favorite, and it still is. What I liked about this is that it kind of took the best of both the FX0 and the Artisan HIEN, and it kind of has an in-between. I guess you call it in-between feel. It just feels really, really nice. So if we see the glide, the FX0 is a slower mouse pad. This one is kind of an in-between. I would say the HIEN, I want to say, is faster. I don't have any analytics to how it feels, but that's just based on the mouse speed. So if I'm sliding it left and right, you can tell that this is way faster than the FX0 series, just in general. Again, I don't have any coefficients, any fancy numbers to kind of throw around, but nonetheless, it's a lot faster compared to the other series mouse pad. So let's talk about the HIEN. And again, this is kind of an in-between, which is why I'm showing it in between the FX0 series. It's like an in-between mouse pad. So if you don't like the HIEN, you don't like the FX0, and you're kind of stuck, and you're like, well, I don't like the X and Y difference of the HIEN, but I wish it kind of was a little slower, a little faster, and I don't like the FX0 how slow it is. Well, the OTSU is kind of a good fit. And as you can tell, what's weird about the xSOFT for this is that you can feel the texture, and it does feel spongy, but you don't sweat as much on this one compared to the FX0 xSOFT. There's a very big noticeable difference in the texture and how it feels across the pad. So I found that very interesting. The biggest takeaway as you're watching this video, and the point that I'm trying to make, is that there's really no right or wrong. This is going to depend 100% on pure preference. So I'm not selling you like, you need to get this, we need to get this one. I hope from just showcasing kind of the difference and talking about some of the pros and cons in terms of glide, that you make a better informed decision. So if I talk about this one, feel it out. You just feel the texture on this one so much, which I guess could equate to better stopping power. Like, just compared to the FX series, like, this just has so much more stopping power. It doesn't feel like a GSR. I know I talked about the other one like a GSR. It's in no way, shape, or form as slow as one. It's really smooth and really fast. And I guess on the website they compare it to a QCK, but definitely a much better one, because a QCK, in my opinion, is just kind of an overall balanced mouse pad, which I guess Artisan is kind of pushing it, saying it's their quote-unquote balanced mouse pad. Okay, so let's talk about the HIEN, because I used that for a really, really long time. Let me bring those back into frame. Now, the interesting part about the HIEN is that they are also the heaviest. So obviously, I mean, it's not super heavy, but even as I carry it and lift it, it's the stiffest of the few, even compared to the HIEN of the FX series. It definitely feels a lot more stiff. It's a lot harder, and it's a lot grainier compared to the other mouse pads. You can tell I definitely used this one quite a bit. The others kind of had a little dirt and stuff. I didn't really wash it for this review. I just wanted to showcase that I definitely put the time and hours into this. What's weird about this mouse pad is that it has a lot of texture, but you can feel the speed when you move it, but it has fantastic stopping power. And I think the biggest thing is because there's a resistance that's different on the left and right side. I would say the left side, like, I don't know if it's really minimal. It's more like the X and Y axis, so the up and down. The left and right feels faster than the up and down, which kind of gives it that really, really nice stopping power compared to the FX series and the OTSU. Like I said, the OTSU is kind of an in-between, so if you really, really hate the texture of the HIEN, then I would go with the OTSU series. If you wear an arm sleeve, then this is a fantastic in-between to utilize as well. The issue that I've had, obviously, with the coloring of most of the Artisan pads is that once they kind of dry out of their color, it starts to fade and it doesn't look as nice as you can tell. I mean, I've washed these quite a bit, and I probably need to wash them even better, but it starts to fade, which is not a bad thing. I mean, I've used these pads for a really long time. I don't ever really feel like the texture changed, though, over time. It feels like the same mouse pad as I bought it. Yeah, it feels the same. I don't really... Like I can say, I noticed a big difference. Now, the interesting part is that you really feel the texture on the core pads, and I think this is the way they were designed. So mice that were designed that have more of this separation of Teflon underneath the bottom. Same thing with the G305 here. The bottom, compared to Hyperglides, where it's a lot more of like a flat, like, boom, here you go, here's a big stick of Teflon, essentially, is that this still feels smooth on the HIEN. You can still feel the texture, but it still feels really smooth compared to this where it feels grainy. So that's something to be mindful of, is that I feel like if there's bigger Teflon, that you still get the smoothness, but you can still feel the texture. But if you have a lot of in between, you can feel the graininess, which is not a bad thing, especially when you're trying to be sharp and have speed. right? That's kind of the biggest thing. I know I've talked about this before on my prior mouse pad quote-unquote review. Again, this is a real gamer's experience. I don't have numbers, I don't have figures. I just want to talk about my real experience with these mouse pads, and hopefully it helps somebody out there, because I've talked about it on a stream and just describing them. And let's do a recap here and just bring each of them to the forefront here. Sorry if I rambled. I didn't have a script, and so I really just wanted this to be real, talking to you guys. Like, I use these pads for a really long time. I really enjoyed them. I honestly really like them. They're really cool compared, and like, you know, I like prior video, I have a crap ton of these. So let me grab the other mouse pads real quick. I might do a little quick jump. Just want to bring them up here and let's talk high level again. Pros and cons. I'm sorry it took so long to get to this point. Hopefully this helps somebody, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Bringing them all back in frame. Look at that. Very pretty. So the OTSU. The OTSU has texture, and you can feel the texture. I'm using an xSOFT here, and it feels a mid. It's the in-between of a HIEN and an FX0, in my opinion. Definitely has a squishiness, definitely has the soft feeling to it. That's awesome. Throw that over here. Boom. Next, we have the FX0 mid. This is a fantastic pad, again, as we talked about when we were showcasing some of the glide. I don't even know if that was helpful or not, but nonetheless, it does get dirty. The hairs kind of stick in the mouse pad, just like the FX0 is kind of infamous for, but less so. Feels a little rougher. Keep in mind, when you get a mid, they feel rougher. That's just kind of the texture, but still has that signature FX0 glide. So I'm gonna throw that away. Whoa. Okay. So the next one here is, and I can tell the difference. It is noticeable when you squish them. You can tell the difference because this is clearly an xSOFT versus the one underneath, which is a soft. So if we have, again, the soft mouse pad, you know what to do? I might put this to the front of the video. I might restructure this to see how this goes in editing. If not, I'll just leave it under one big video. So if we have this here, the soft, and we put it front, very squishy, can get a little sweaty, still has the infamous texture there, feels very nice, doesn't have a different X and Y axis. I guess it's like a QCK, but with better speeds. Throw that to the side over there. Same thing, this is a soft. It's kind of the in-between of the mid and the xSOFT. It's just the in-between. So if you happen to have a certain feeling towards one of them, well, if you want the in-between feeling. And keep in mind, it's very minimal. It's not like you're going to be drastically noticing the difference. So if you've purchased an xSOFT, you're like, oh my god, I gotta get a mid. Well, you'll just notice a difference in terms of how hard the surface is. And if you just really don't like the squishiness, maybe if you press too hard down in your mouse pad, you might notice a bit of resistance. I don't know. Let's throw that out to the side over there. Okay, and then we have the Artisan HIEN MID, which is obviously, as you can tell, a little bit more stiff like a board compared to the other one, not as squishy. And yeah, I put a lot of time into this one. Just has a different X and Y from... There's something different going on in the mouse pad. I want to say it's a different X and Y. Yeah. And so it gives you crazy stopping power compared to the other ones, but also maintains speed. So it's kind of why I use the HIEN a lot. My current one I go to in terms of mouse pads out of all of these is either the FX0 xSOFT or the OTSU xSOFT. For some reason, I've tended to gravitate towards the xSOFTs recently. I guess because I want more of the speed, and because the mice, whenever the Teflon hits it on the xSOFT, it tends to be faster than a mid. I guess to prove that theory, I would need to get an xSOFT of the HIEN. The crux of the video here, as we're talking about it, is don't feel bad if you didn't get an xSOFT or HIEN mid or anything like that. They're just going to feel slightly different, but it's really not worth the extra money to purchase a whole other one. I did it just to kind of showcase it and test theories out. It's not like any one of them gave me like the best aim. It just kind of gave me a different experience, which is not a good thing and not a bad thing. I would say out of all the mouse pads, when you throw like 7 different mice on each of these mouse pads, which would be like a marathon worth of a video in itself, you will say, oh my gosh, this feels the smoothest than this mouse pad. Or, oh my gosh, this one notices that I feel the most graininess on it. And I use the word grainy is that you just feel the texture. Or this one has like the in-between feel. And then you pull out another mouse and you're like, wow, that feels different. Again, it's all in the shape of whatever the Teflon is at the bottom, where it's spaced out, what it's picking up and what it's not, and why it's going to vary as well your experience from these mouse pads. So hopefully this is helpful for somebody out there. Very long video. I apologize for that, but hopefully just talking through it is helpful. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to leave a comment, subscribe, leave a like. I appreciate all the support on the channel recently. It's definitely been pretty wild. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye, everybody.